welcome. My name is Bill Reeks, and I lead a company called the Gramercy Institute. We're a think tank for senior marketers from major financial firms. Today, I have both the honor and the pleasure to be hosting the third of 4 different webinars focused on the agency point of view. We call the series our Agency Brilliance webinar series. And I think the content of this particular webinar is going to live up to its name. It is a pleasure to be with all of you. Our particular topic today is strategy setting in financial services marketing. That said, we have a host. We have 5 different panelists, all from various agencies with different specializations here, to talk to us about the importance, the relevance, as well as the ins and outs of setting strategy in financial services marketing. So I'll begin with the beginning, and I'm going to start with Donna MacFarland, and I'll ask you to introduce yourself to us, Donna, if you would. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and Accelerate Strategies, if you would. You have to unmute.
Got it. There we go. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Bill. I'm Donna MacFarland. I am the founder and CEO of Accelerate Strategies. We are a boutique marketing strategy agency based in the Philadelphia market. We specialize in conducting marketing research studies on all types of topic areas, specifically helping marketers create strategy. And from that, we really work closely with our clients in terms of the creation of various marketing and brand strategy programs. And we specialize particularly in the area of positioning, messaging, and naming. So those are some of the areas that we go deep in and have worked with a number of clients in that area. Personally, I came out of the corporate world, having served as a CMO at Lincoln Financial Group in my past, as well as senior level positions at Vanguard and a number of other financial services firms. So we are deep in the financial services sector.
That's excellent and a very well executed introduction, and I thank you for that. Donna, I thank you for joining us as well. Meg Staknis, I will ask you to kindly introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit more about IMPRINT and tell us about what you do there, if you would.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. My name is Meg Staknis, and I'm a managing director for strategy at IMPRINT. We are a full service content marketing and strategy agency based in New York City. We're 8 years old, so we're relatively new, but in those past 8 years, we've twice been named Content Marketing Agency of the Year, which we're very proud of. We are very invested in the financial services sector. About 60% of our business is in that sector, but we also cover higher ed, consumer goods, hospitality, nonprofit. And in terms of my background, I spent 10 years on the client side at Fidelity Investments, spent some time at TIAA, and then for the last 10 years or so, I've been on the agency side. So I have a purview into both worlds, and I'm really happy to be here and really excited about the opportunity to talk about strategy today. So thanks for having me, Bill.
Well, it is truly our pleasure, Meg, and thank you so much for joining us. Anthony Nygren, would you please introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit more about EMI strategic marketing, if you would?
Sure. Thanks, Bill. And thanks for having me today on the panel, along with these other great folks. So I am a EVP at EMI Strategic Marketing. I lead our investments practice. EMI is a agency that has been around for over 30 years. We sort of work at the intersection of consulting and an agency, and the integration of consulting and agency, in the sense that we really talk about the way in which we try to think like consultants, but be able to execute campaigns like an agency, and use that knowledge and the executional ability to really feed both aspects, and hopefully optimize them in our work with clients. And the work that we do is primarily in financial services, a bit in technology, and certainly in fintech as well. And what we are doing is really aiming to maximize the value, develop and maximize the value of customer relationships on behalf of our clients by accelerating sales channels. And we do that through a variety of means, including email, social media, sales enablement tools and materials. Kind of runs the gamut from awareness building through to conversion at the point of sale.
Well, it is terrific to have you on board, Anthony. We very much appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to some of your thinking around this important topic. So thank you so much. Robert Powers, I will ask you to kindly chime in, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, as well as what you do at Merge and about Merge. Unmute if you would, Robert.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Nice to see you today, and nice to see all the panelists today. I'm an EVP at Merge, specifically focusing on financial services. It's a growing arena for us. Merge is a company that kind of marries and connects the idea behind storytelling, which is what all of us do every day in our lives, with technology, which is the great enabler in which to do that. We work with a number of Fortune 500 companies in 3 very specific areas, and growing in a 4th right now. One around asset management, one specifically around credit cards, the other around insurance, and we're now moving back into retail bank. I've been in the digital world for about 25 plus years, the last 15 specifically around financial services, working with some of the large brands like American Express, TIAA, currently working again with American Express at Merge, along with some of the asset management companies up in Boston. Super excited to start the conversation around strategy. So thanks for having us, and I'm looking forward to all those tough questions, Bill.
That's great. Robert, thanks so much. The first one's coming to you. Bill Gordy, would you kindly introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit more about the Solutions Group and what you do there.
Certainly. Thank you, Bill, and welcome everyone. As with my esteemed panelists, I too welcome the discussion and the thinking around strategy, because boy, the world's a very different place now than it was even a year ago, when the beginning of COVID, for sure, right? But I'm Chief Strategy Officer at the Solutions Group. We're a strategic marketing firm, very similar to what you've heard the other panelists talk about in terms of, I'd say, functions and capabilities. In terms of, what we do is we really help clients think through strategies and help align marketing strategies into overall business strategies. And one of the things that we're really seeing getting a lot of traction in, Bill, is especially when it relates to financial marketing, right? Is what is this thing called strategy? If you ask 10 people what their definition of strategy is, you can get 10 different responses, right? Sometimes. But what we do at the Solutions Group is we really help, I'd say, focus strategic thinking, align marketing to the business, connect to customers, in positive ways for sure, but also too, and a little bit what everyone has talked on is, in the new world order now, it's like we're spending a lot of time with clients thinking about their purpose around, about companies and brands, but also the purpose of strategy and how to really create and drive value growth in various industries. We do work a lot in financial services, of course. We work with TIAA, I've heard some folks talk about them as well. We do work with AIG, Lincoln Financial as well. We have worked with T. Rowe Price in the past as well. So combination of asset management firms, but we really have I'd say a unique view into the retirement space, especially, and that's getting a lot of notoriety now. And we have a lot of expertise there as well. Personally, for me, I started out in global advertising agencies, the first half of my career, know enough to be dangerous there. And now I worked at AT&T for a number of years on the client side, and now I'm a consultant and agency hybrid person as well. So thank you.
Bill, thank you so much for that introduction, for that background about the Solutions Group. I'm going to offer myself a round of applause right now, because I truly have lined up an awesome panel, and I really do thank you guys for joining us on this specific subject. To our viewers, now that you have met our panelists, it's my pleasure also to introduce you to our sponsors. And if you look above my shoulder, it is a pleasure for us to thank Dianomi, Investing Channel, and Additions Financial for their support of this platform, right? This specific series of 4 webinars focused on the agency point of view. And I thank you to our sponsors. That all said, let's begin at the beginning. And I will come to you, Robert Powers, if I will, sir. And I want to start our conversation with a very broad overview question that it doesn't have a right, wrong, yes, no answer to. And that really is this: why is this a topic, right? I had 4 different, I wanted to do this series on 4 different subjects, right? Creative, we did one on media, we did one on the customer journey, and we're doing one on strategy. So it's obviously important, at least it is to me, but talk to me in your own words. Why is strategy such an important thing today in financial marketing?
Thanks, Bill. I think strategy is good when it's good, but it's great when it comes out of understanding insights. And I've been fortunate to kind of, between Merge and some of my past, the reason you're able to have strong strategies is because you have good insights, but you also have great data. And that data leads you to develop, incredible, powerful, impactful ideas. So working with strategists, I believe their job as a subject matter expert is to really understand 3 kind of things. What do we understand around the current customer, and that being our clients, the environment around them, so the competitive environment, and then really understanding kind of what's happening in the marketplace as a whole. And we've all been in the same place for the last 18 months, which is in the middle of a pandemic. And strategies are evolving every single day. And we're in a different place we were a year ago. So I think it's important to say that strategies are good, strategies are important, but great strategies, in my mind, start with great insights. They start with great planners in the strategy arena, and they allow us to kind of bring great ideas forward. And those ideas are the things that you want to create impact. And impact can be, how do we influence around a branding component? It may be around an impact around sales, or it may be an impact that is around retention because you know about a brand. So strategy is really important in financial services. It's done through a different platform. It used to be face-to-face, but today it's really thinking about digital and how do we leverage digital to be more in that personalization arena. So strategy is important more than ever, and being agile today is going to be critical for success when we start thinking about how strategies are evolving day to day.
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much for that thoughtful response. Donna, I'll scoot over to you, if I may. I'm going to ask you for your feedback in light of Robert's response. I mean, please shed any light onto this subject, if you would, about why is strategy important today in financial marketing. And then I have a second part of a question that I'll ask you after I hear from you on that.
Okay, sounds good. I definitely agree with Robert. The world has changed dramatically in the last year and a half. And so with the environment changing, we need to think about the way we go to market in different ways, new ways, and just refreshing kind of the approach we're taking. So it's important to kind of analyze that and figure out particularly what customer needs and wants are, given the changes that have occurred. So really understanding what's happening in the marketplace. The competitive environment in our industry is that much more intense. Things happen at a much more rapid pace than ever. So I think that laying strategy is a foundational element to any good marketing program or development. So it's just it's a critical component. I'm kind of biased on it, but it really is a foundational element to doing anything well and being effective.
It is in your company name. It wasn't it was a simple task to realize that you're my go-to on this. So thank you for that. And thank you for your response. Let me ask you, Bill Gordy, who is one of our panelists, just mentioned that, if you ask 10 people, how do you define, strategy, you might get 10 different answers. Don't worry, panel. I'm not going to ask each of you to please define it, but I am going to ask you to start with this, Donna, if you would. How would you define it? How would you define it? And okay, yeah, I'll ask you that if you would. Yeah.
Sure. I think, having come out of a long career in marketing and also getting my degrees in marketing, it extends back to me to the 4 Ps, because when I started my career, that was kind of the nature of marketing strategy, were the 4 Ps. Now, I don't know if we're up to 7, 8, 9, 10, or however many Ps we have today, but it really is focusing on those core elements and really thinking about all the aspects of go-to-market, product, place, promotion and price is important. Yeah, so I think those are the core. I definitely know in our discipline we've added more along the way as things have evolved in the digital frame and all that. But really thinking about those 4 core elements are really important.
Yeah, Donna, thank you so much. Meg, I'll move to you if I may, and we're really sort of in the early stage of this discussion, and I want to ask you back to what Bill Gordy mentioned about there's a lot of different ways to define it. I'm going to ask you why are there so many different ways? If you ask different professionals in our space, it might define strategy, or you don't need to agree. You might want to say it's just I'm really splitting hairs here, and it all comes down to the same thing. But what's your take on this?
Well, I think that there are a lot of different ways to define it because there are a lot of creative thinkers in marketing, and people approach things in different ways. But I think that there are some fundamental elements of the discipline that are consistent. There's a very, very consistent focus on the customer and the needs of the customer. And that's foundational to any strategy. What does the customer need? What's the problem that you're trying to solve for them? There is a very consistent focus on the objectives of the business. What are you trying to advance in terms of the business goals and purpose? That's a critical component of every strategy. What's the competitive context? That's the critical component of every strategy. So people might get at those things differently depending on if they're a linear thinker or a creative thinker, or how they put those components together, and they might call those things different things. But I think the puzzle pieces tend to be relatively homogeneous if you really look at them discreetly and try to put them together. That's my take. My 4 colleagues here might disagree, but that's kind of how I see it.
No, that is a terrific response. Do you want to take a stab at how you would define marketing strategy?
Sure. I mean, I tend to be a linear thinker. So I really begin with the audience, with the customer. What do they need? What's the pain that we have to assuage? And what are the business goals that we need to advance? Those 2 things are always really front and center in the strategies that we're trying to put together. And then what does success look like? If we can really keep those 3 things front and center, then what are the creative elements that we can brainstorm to deliver against those particular goalposts? Those are, that's kind of how I think about putting together a strategy.
Yeah. Meg, thank you very much. I'll move on to you, Anthony, if I may, and please feel free to offer your input on Meg or what Donna has said thus far. If you would, but I also want to ask you, is it always important to have a strategy, or, can sometimes, marketing and gut instinct just sort of, work well in certain circumstances? What's your take on that?
I do think it's always important to have a strategy. The word is also in our name. So,
yes,
so we
true.
Collectively as a firm strongly believe that you always need a strategy. And the reason for that, from my perspective, from EMI's perspective, is that for us, strategy is about how you organize yourself and your activities. It's about how you identify, prioritize, pursue opportunities in the market most efficiently and effectively. And, especially in the environment that we've been in over the past 18 months, it's really easy. I mean, to some extent, I think this is true all the time. It's incredibly easy to lose yourself in the day-to-day tactical existence of just getting your list done that day and doing what you need to do. And that's for me, for EMI, strategy is sort of like the map that you have. You use your GPS. I'm terrible because I don't think I can read a map anymore. I couldn't drive a car using a map anymore with my GPS, but the GPS is telling me where to go. I have no idea where I am. It's just saying to turn right, so I turn right. but the GPS is like the strategy, right? I mean, that's how you get from where you are to where you're going. And sometimes, like with the GPS, you make a wrong turn or you get diverted, but you're still going to end up at your destination. And that's what strategy is about, is making sure that whatever you're doing, wherever you are right now and whatever you're working on, it is ultimately aligned to that objective of identifying and pursuing the best opportunities that are available to you in the market.
Yeah, that's a terrific response, and thank you, Anthony. Bill Gordy, I've already spoken about you in the third person a number of times so far. I will ask you, please, to answer that same question that Anthony did so well. Is it always important to have a strategy? Do you agree with him, or are there times that something just needs to be done in a reactionary kind of way, in a gut feeling kind of way, when it comes to marketing?
Yeah. Anthony was very articulate in describing it, I would say, and it's interesting, Bill, that you asked that question, because I had this conversation very recently with clients in different organizations and companies too. The short answer is yes, absolutely, right? And I think to add on to what everyone has just talked to a little bit, I think that it's amazing how polarizing, you say the word strategy, right, is, and you can get people think they'll tell you what they think they believe it is, right? And I think what Anthony did a nice job of saying, along with Meg and Donna as well, is that, for me, keeping it simple, it's about identifying what's the right thing to do for the right reasons, right, with the right priorities. And it is that roadmap, Anthony. I think you're right. And very often, sometimes people are so assuaged by what they have to do on their day jobs, Meg, to your point, right, that sometimes people become myopic in their views, lose track or perspective of what the strategy really is supposed to be, and to break through and step back and say, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how are we going to get there from here? So sometimes it's the basic principles of strategy, like we've all been talking to. Sometimes we have to just pound that in, on a recurring basis. But it's also, I think, being that the degree of, to the point of, hey, acceleration and velocity is change. Everything's got to happen faster, right? And very often for us, it's, hey, let's counsel on what's really the right thing to do. Let's not an execution or a tactic drive the strategy. Let the strategy drive the tactics. And you'd be amazed at how often we have those conversations on a regular basis.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I will also add, and please respond to this if you will. We're all, not me, but you all, are in the agency business, right? By definition, you have, and I'm using that in quotes, but you all have clients, right? You have this responsibility. It's a fiduciary responsibility to your clients to map out and do things in accordance with a plan, rather than, they don't hire you just for, like, hey, I got an idea. Could you comment on that, if you would, the importance, particularly of an agency, to really have command of this of strategy and strategic thinking, Bill?
Yeah, and another good question there, Bill, because what, sometimes on the agency side, we're the outsiders, right? And especially strategy, typically it's very protective and sensitive for client side people, because they believe they're the keepers of strategy, right? And they're the keepers of knowledge, if you will, right? And how to drive it. And I think that Robert talked a little bit earlier, I think, about insights, right? And the power of insights. Yes, you need data. There's a lot of data out there, right? In a way, data almost has become a commodity. So it's a matter of, what do you do with that data to find those insights in order to align it then to what you want to do and how you want to do it, right? Which is your strategy. So I think my answer there, Bill, would be, that's one of the harder things for our side of the desk, to be able to gain, I would say, and I don't want to say respect, right? Because I think clients do respect us for what we do, but sometimes we have to help them open up and be receptive to an objective point of view, into the thinking and the logic for the construct of the strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Bill, thank you very much for your response. Your responses. Meg, let me move to you, if I may. Mike Tyson very articulately stated at one point that everyone has a strategy until you get punched in the nose. And I always laugh when I hear that quote, particularly, of course, because it's coming from him. But really, he's spot on in a certain way, right? That you have this great strategy, and then something happens that just like knocks you over. With respect to the COVID punch that hit us all, would you comment, please, about what really happened with some of your clients? You don't have to name names or name specifics, but what happened with some of your clients when that punch in the nose came and it was time to reset the strategy?
I'd say it was much stronger than a punch in the nose, Bill.
Yeah, right.
It was like a full
Knockout.
body slam, actually. And they, they adapted very quickly, as we all did. And that meant a complete overhaul of what they had been doing up to that point. And for some, it meant re-examining. It started again with, what does my customer need right now? It's not what they needed last week. What they needed last week was steady Eddie communications. What they need right now is immediate communication every single day about what's happening. And I have to figure out how to respond to that. So that was one example. And a number of our clients began having daily updates with their end investors and so forth, and the pace of communications became much more frequent. The delivery mechanisms changed completely, as we know, because everything went digital. The need to rethink and reinvent happened so fast, but it was really driven, I think, again, by the same fundamental elements. What does the customer need? What does the business have to do to deliver on that? And then, how are we going to figure out how to do that? So those kind of fundamental components were really important. But I really like what Anthony said earlier, that strategy is a mechanism for organizing, prioritizing, and pursuing what you're going to go after, because that is really what it's intended to do. And it takes the noise out of the equation. And that's really important. It really helps you understand what you're not going to focus on.
Yeah.
It's what you are.
Yeah. Meg, thank you very much. And I will point out that I've been in this industry long enough to be able to speak firsthand to the fact that the response from our industry, all right, from the financial marketing industry, in the face of this, of this crisis, was far different from what it had been in the past, right? Like around, the 9/11, people went silent, right? It was the exact opposite of the advice that I believe, what you just shared with us, that you encourage your own clients to do, which is keep talking, talk through it. You might not have all the answers right now, but keep talking and keep communicating. And it's interesting to me, I guess I'll just ask your opinion on it. So it looks like our agency, our industry has kind of woken up to, this is the way you handle the face of a crisis. Is that fair?
I think it depends on the crisis, but in general, transparency is better than opacity. It's better to be open and honest than it is to kind of, keep everything under the covers.
Yeah. Yeah. Meg, thank you very much. Robert, I'll move to you, if I may, sir. And let's stay on this same thread about, what happens when crisis strikes? What happens to the strategy, the big idea that we've all sort of set forth in terms of our roadmap to getting things done in the right way? What happens when, this road takes an unexpected turn?
I love the Mike Tyson question, because everybody thinks Mike Tyson is kind of a big dumb idiot. He's actually a lot smarter than all of us. Probably one of the best marketers that live on the planet today. And
True
I
and
think
true.
he took a page out of Darwin, right? Darwin came back and said, it's not going to be the fastest or the smartest, it's those who are able to adapt. And so as I look at kind of what happened in the punch in the face, as Meg said, the body slam, and kind of as we look at the world, what I saw is a couple of things. I think transparency and conversation. Clients were trying to figure out, what do they do? If you think about our industry, it's really based on trust. And the trust used to be personal. And it used to be you would go to an individual's office, or you would look for a loan, or you would be trying to figure out how to do your retirement plan. But there was always a face-to-face and literally the kind of the handshake. So I think the world that we were fortunately in was the financial services category was trying to catch up to a lot of consumer marketers, an Amazon, if you will, a Zappos, or people that were Uber, companies that were kind of what would be considered a digital first. And the digital first program now elevated itself, and the use of data, the use of making sure that we work through our compliance partners, we work through risk mitigation. And so there's a lot more detail behind what we do in financial services to build and maintain trust. And how do we do that through digital channels where it's not happening face to face? And so as we were going through this with our clients, what we were seeing is a consistent conversation around what we call the Fernie. So how do we take the customer journey as anyone kind of goes through that, whether you're in the middle of finding a loan, whether you're in the middle of talking to a financial advisor about retirement, whether you're thinking about how do you leverage your credit card better because you now don't want to touch anything with it. You know, the world became very, very different. So the funnel, as we know it in advertising and marketing, is this idea behind awareness, interest, and desire. And the customer journey, no matter where you are along that, may be different. So being agile, being adaptable, and understanding how to be more transparent with our clients so they can be transparent with their clients became a critical piece to, I just got punched in the face, but I got to get up and I got to finish the next, I don't know what round you got knocked out by Mike Tyson in, but the thought process is, I got this, I need to stand up. I need to be facing it and be very transparent and solving problems every single day, as many of the panelists have talked about earlier today.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And what I'm detecting from your answer too is there's an implied candor that is required between a client and its agency in terms of, look, I don't have all the answers right now, but we're working on it. Because if I may remind us all that as this COVID crisis rolled out, as Meg said, it wasn't this this quick thing that just happened. It's a different kind of thing. But we didn't know the scope of it, right? I don't know about you, but I think maybe you'll agree that we thought this could be a few weeks. We thought it could be a couple of months. And very important companies were looking to all of you for responses. And I think could you just comment, Robert, a little bit on how candor plays a role when you're speaking with your client?
Yeah, I think candor is the right thing, right? And candor, what it really does, it has to do with respect and mutual respect. And in our world today, especially around financial services, the marketing side of what we do, of all of us as agency people, is always seen as a liability. And what I found with a number of our customers is, how do we turn that liability into an asset? How do we demonstrate in the face of what we're facing, we can actually use marketing to create and drive results? How do we bring in more customers? How do we drive more assets under management, right? How do we build a better financial plan? And so when I think about candor, it is the ability to have an honest conversation with your clients and their customers. And if you look today at some of the trust figures that we're seeing, everybody talks about trust, but a lot of it's just talking about it. Now what we need to do is how do we deliver it? How do we deliver it in a way in which candor plays an honest kind of role in delivering it?
Yeah, and it's what's ironic about that is that our industry tends to have a reputation of not being terribly, having driven by candor and frankness. And let me tell you the absolute score right here. And it may be earned, from that reputation from a decade or two or three ago. But I think now what I'm hearing from you is that, geez, success, particularly from a strategic point of view, is really guided by being completely open with your clients. Yeah. Donna, thank you, Robert. Donna, let me move to you, my friend. speak to me a little bit about some of the advice that you offered to some of your clients in light of the crisis that unfolded, and how you kept them strategically aligned as the process sort of unfolded or unraveled a little further.
Yeah, sure. So as Meg and Robert and others have spoken, it was really important to get on message and stay on message when there's a crisis. You know, that's really a critical component to consider. So, and especially everybody moving to a digital world, it became even more important for organizations to ensure that everybody was aligned in terms of their messaging. So really consulted with companies to ensure that they had their core messages down and that everybody was really aligned to those and able to deliver those to the marketplace in a consistent manner, because it was really critical, which again will help instill trust. So a lot of that was visiting some of the core messaging, and then in turn really aligning it back to the brand. Are we being authentic to the brand? And yes, a lot of things have changed, but really, are we looking back to the brand strategy? Are we on point? Are we true to our brand values and attributes and that sort of thing as things are evolving and unfolding? So that was a big part of our consult. The other thing too, I would say, is that you know, as many organizations inside this industry and outside this industry, we're really looking at their human capital strategy. Yeah. So just in the marketing function alone, it was like, how should we be thinking about our team to ensure that everyone's engaged and morale is strong? It's a big focus of organizations today, and especially in these virtual environments. So, you know, it's interesting because not unlike other industries, in our industry and in this sector particularly, you know, the talent pool is kind of changed all of a sudden because it's now much more virtual. It's opened up. So, you know, there's a focus on how do we keep and retain talent and ensure that everybody is engaged and motivated. So that was another area that I think I heard and saw conversations happening specific to marketing teams.
Yeah. Donna, thank you so much for your response and the good advice that you've shared with us. Anthony, I'll scoot on to you if I may. Okay, so you know, that was then, right? That was that was a year and a half ago. When this all sort of, you know, unfolded before our eyes. Now we're in a new era. All right, we're moving forward. I think we can all agree, while we're not out of COVID and that environment at this moment, it is, or at least our sights are on a post-COVID world right now. From certainly your clients are. What is your, and of course, I know you can only be so specific, but in general, what is your advice to your clients right now as we prepare for a new phase, right? This is a new world that we're sort of emerging into. Communications have changed, right? Face-to-face has changed. Your staffing, as Donna mentioned, you know, of your own team has changed, and the way they communicate, et cetera. What is some of your guiding strategies that you're offering to some of your clients, if to the ability that you're able to share with us here?
Sure. I mean, you know, I think the biggest one is something that actually came up, you know, back at I guess it was 16 months ago, when we, EMI, together with Gramercy, did some research talking to marketers about how they were adapting back right at the beginning of the pandemic. And one of the questions we asked was, you know, what do you anticipate you're going to do as things start to open up? And I think that is what came out of that conversation is highly relevant today, which is that idea of being able to look back on what happened over the past 16 months and say, well, wait a minute, we were forced to do some things differently. And you know what? Some of them actually worked pretty well. Yeah. So let's figure out how to extract and leverage the pieces that we were able to develop and bring to market on the fly under pressure, that ended up working, and do more of those and less of what we had thought traditionally we had done before. So, you know, in asset management, you know, there's this long-standing tradition of how distribution works, and the fact that you've got wholesalers going out and calling on advisors and clients, and That's just always the way it's been, but they couldn't do that when things were locked down. And you know what? They figured out a different way to do some of that, whether that was through webcasts or one-on-one calls or more calls that you could do from your desk, or things that were organized even though they were virtual but still stayed within a certain geography or a certain grouping of clients that had some affinity. There are just or to Robert's point, leveraging data that they had sitting around that they could figure out, who do we send this message to at this point in time. It forced ways of doing things and thinking about things that were, honestly, in a lot of cases better than what they were before, because there was a lot of sort of sclerosis about, well, I don't know, this is just always the way we've done it. I'm not going to question it. And this made everybody question things. And so, we're now at a stage where we're coming out of that and people are making decisions. Our clients are making decisions about, well, you know what? We were able to do more things for the same amount of money. Why don't we keep doing that? And it seemed to have worked well.
Yeah, that is such a good point and such a great way to explain it to us. And thank you, Anthony, very much. I'm going to ask Bill Gordy, if you agree with Anthony's point of view on this, and share with us also any advice that you might have as we come out of this COVID situation and now face this new world. I'm going to point out too, hearkening back to Robert Power's comments about adaptability. Anthony, I'm speaking to some of your points that, and Robert, that this notion of adaptability is really what seems to be driving the day. But anyway, that all said, Bill, what is your thought on this particular line of question?
I think last time I followed Anthony, I seconded it. What he said.
Yeah.
And I'll do it. And in his example there too, and we can tell you we're up to our necks in this with several clients too. When you look at the business model now, especially when you look at asset management and you look at wholesalers and the distribution of all of those products and services, each one of those players across and throughout the value chain are now rethinking and re-questioning things. And they're saying, yes, to Anthony's point, you know what, maybe there were a lot of built-in inefficiencies, but we just did it because that's just how we did it, right? But now what we're seeing is, questioning everything. And to a couple of the other points made, I'll just say, I'll tap onto that and say, trust is the currency. It's earned. Everyone is in almost kind of like a massive reset or transition period in terms of questioning who they're working with, why they're working with them, what are they doing, what are they bringing to the party, what value, right? And why am I working with you ultimately? And now we're seeing is we're helping these firms be able to really do that self-identity process to really establish their points of differentiation and competitive advantage. And I'll link it real quickly, Bill, to your point about candor earlier. Candor, I'll use a synonym for it. And because we embed this in a lot of our approaches now, it's about truth. And people have to, I think now are opening up and are more receptive for what it really means to be truthful and objective. And so I think it's a huge opportunity for strategy, right? To really, I'd say, grow in importance because of it. But you know what? It's all about people ultimately. And and I think we're seeing that now the lines of communication are open more than maybe where they weren't previously. They're more open to it. They're asking really good, smart questions. And it's fun to do what we do now because you know what? We've rolled up our sleeves and we have a seat at the table with our clients now in a really good way.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Bill,
yeah, Anthony, please.
I'm just going to take a second. I just wanted to give a shout out to the fact that Meg keeps bringing up customers, and to sort of, as I was thinking about what I said and what Bill was saying, the the way in which you judge whether something that you had to do during COVID is working is by talking to and looking at your customers and seeing what they need and what has changed about what they want. So in some cases, a customer might not want you to come to their office anymore because they said, you know what, I kind of liked it when you just called me on the phone more times than when you came to my office. So I just, that's obviously super important to ground it in what the customers are looking for.
And it's had a big impact on how companies are going to market, what their strategies are, right? What's relevant to their customer base and how to, we'll say resonate, right, with them. But you're right, Anthony, because sometimes they're saying, oh, we'll work from home, permanent now. You all have to figure out how to service us and meet our needs and demands and the new set of expectations that exist now.
Yeah, those are all terrific points. And indeed, pointing back to Meg's original point about the importance of the customer. And I will mention to you what was running through my mind here. Unlike other industries, financial services tends to be a bit of a laggard, buried or in tradition, right? In legacy systems. And it's like, well, we're doing it this way because this is the way we've done it before. And this, I believe, has really sort of broken a cycle in a little bit that maybe a new era of pragmatism in financial services marketing, where we're doing something because it works, right? Because it's the best thing to do, not because this is just the way we've done it before, and this won't make too much friction up in the C-level suites. So I think this is a great opportunity, sort of a new beginning for our industry in many ways. So, Donna, let me come to you, if I may, with a question. It's kind of a gear shift right here. I want to talk about, we've identified the importance of strategy, and we sort of talked about it on a granular level. I want to talk to you about the importance of keeping the team on strategy, and really tactically speaking, how do you do that? I mean, you're an agency, right? You're on the outside, and many of your clients, you come to them and they talk strategy, and you craft a brilliant strategy, but oftentimes you've got big companies that got to stay on board with it. Can you speak to some of the challenges and some of the solutions?
Sure. Well, building a strategy is hard work. It's not easy. And I think that's why companies often kind of want to streamline the process and move quickly, but it's important work. So it's got to be done right and well. And so what we do is we bring in the process to help help organizations, our clients, create their strategy and own their strategy. It's their strategy, not our strategy, but we're providing the process to help build the strategy in a way that it becomes sustainable. Because it's hard, it's difficult, and it can take time. You don't want to have to keep building strategy after strategy overnight. So our approach is really to involve our clients in the creation. They have to own it and create it. And we are providing the guidance and process to that, and looking to them to co-collaborate on the creation of the strategy. We're there to help guide through that process and provide our direction and insights. But at the end of the day, they're creating it and owning it. Yeah. And I think that by engaging them through the entire process, that's how they actually, and it becomes theirs. They look to own it over time. When our assignment is over and we're not necessarily there day to day anymore, it really helps to embed it and ensure that it does sustain over time.
Thank you, Donna. Let me ask you this though: fair or unfair, though, if you craft a brilliant strategy, right, and for whatever reason, it loses momentum or it loses ground, you're kind of judged on that, though, aren't you? I mean, as I say, fair or unfair, and are there ways that you have been retained to help your people on the inside to keep things on strategy, and speak to that? And if the answer is no,
I think because we take such a disciplined and rigorous approach to it, we haven't had the situation where someone's kind of veering off of it, quickly. Yeah. We do stay on to help provide guidance and direction in terms of how are they then implementing the strategy. It's not just about delivering the strategy, but it's bringing it to life in the marketplace. So helping to provide those insights and guidance. We're not so much on the downstream of the marketing funnel. We're more on the upstream side of it, our agency. So we're there, but we can provide direction, insights on terms of marketing program development and execution. So, by doing those frequent touch points, as once the strategy has been delivered and embedded in the organization, accepted, and see how is it going, where are you today, where are things, do they need to be tweaked at all, who can you engage internally in the process in a different way to maybe make sure that it's still moving forward in the right direction.
Yeah. Donna, thank you very much for your response to that. Meg, let me move to you on this same line of thinking about the importance of keeping your agency team as well as your clients on strategy, keeping things moving forward, and the role that you as an agency play in that.
Yeah, it is extremely important, and I think you're getting to the how, and sometimes it's as foundational as the written document that has everything put together that you refer back to regularly, that people have agreed upon. And within our agency, generally the account folks are charged with sort of owning it, but everybody is really responsible for understanding it, for internalizing it, and for being responsible for ensuring that every single deliverable is reflective of it. But we also, even before we begin, we are committed to making sure that we have a shared understanding with the client that what we're after is what they want us to go after, that they're in agreement. And, very often it's a documented brief or it's a documented strategy that everybody's agreed to. And so sometimes it's just as simple as referring to that, and things obviously change. So when they do change, you want to adapt and make sure that you've got things documented so that you can communicate back to everybody that's involved, because the last thing that you want is to go down a path where you've done a lot of work and it's not reflective of the direction that things have, they've taken a left turn and you're still going down I-90.
Yeah. I come from an agency background myself, and I can remember oftentimes where I would come up with this brilliant idea, something I would think was personally like just the smartest thing in the world. But then of course, inevitably it would be, well, is it on strategy or not? And I'm making the point that your work is difficult because keeping it on strategy, despite these brilliant ideas or these services, new marketing services happen to walk in the door and say, this is what you need, are really difficult for you to say, I'm sorry, it doesn't fit into our strategy at this point right now. Very cool. I'm sure it would do a lot of good, but not on strategy. Yeah.
Sometimes it's very reflective of the culture of the client that we're working with. Sometimes there are cultures where people are very reluctant to say no. They're very polite.
Yeah.
And so there's well, we'll take it under advisement. Maybe we could do something. And sometimes there are other cultures where it's very direct, and the client is very comfortable saying, the reason we have this strategy is to help us prioritize. And I really like the idea that you have, but that just doesn't fit right now with what we're trying to accomplish. So we have to put that aside for the moment. So I think enlisting your client partners to help sort of advocate for what the direction is going to be is critical to making sure that you're going to be able to accomplish, because scope creep is real, and that can happen if you're not all on the same page.
That's right. Meg, thank you for that. Robert, let me move to you if I may. I'm curious to know now, about the relationship between an agency and its client regarding the strategy, about the ownership of the strategy, about how closely guarded a strategy may be in terms of who gets to tweak, adjust, or even speak to what it should or should not be. Could you speak to that in your general experience, if you would? And does it ever create any friction between an agency and the client?
There's never any friction between an agency and
No,
a client. It's always,
it's all good.
it's a dream environment that we live in. And I think it's a really good question, Bill. I think as we kind of look at the world, we do this thing called Launchpad, which is we ask our clients at the very, very beginning to have the right stakeholders involved in the process. And process was used, Donna, by you and Meg, and I think that's really important. But sometimes when you have stakeholders that forget they were a part of the process at the beginning, bringing them back to that is really important. So by using a Launchpad-like environment where you say, what does success look like for this project? And what are the hurdles to get there? Sometimes you're going to find 5 different stakeholders have 5 different ideas. So aligning them behind what the role is of the strategy and about what the outcomes are going to be, understanding that you bring them along the way at what we call checkpoints. Let's not get too far away from the stakeholders. Eventually we're going to have to get their approval on it. So we like stakeholder checkpoints as we're kind of moving through that process along the way. And like everything else, things change, right? You learn new things. You learn from your customers. You learn from, any of the stakeholders, or you may learn from the competitive environment where the world zigged, you're going to need to zag. And so making sure that you keep the team involved. And one of the things we talk about, it's everybody's job to keep the strategy sold, not just the guy or the woman who's the planner that's like, they're going to be the voice of reason. It's everything that you do. Everybody that's talking about it within the environment is making sure you keep that sold. The strategy ultimately will be the place. Hopefully, if it's based on those insights, that's based on the data, that'll help to get to a breakthrough idea or a breakthrough path forward. So the expectation is keeping it sold is critically important, because at the end of the day, what everybody really cares about in this category, if you're a client, is how do I get more assets under management? How do I acquire more people to deliver the products and services that we have? And whether that's throughput when you're talking to a retail bank, whether it's that's more assets under management for a financial advisor, whether it's making more sales of particular products and services as a wholesaler, the financial services category is deep and super deep, and there's always room for space, and keeping the strategy as the cornerstone, as the guiding set of principles for that adaptability is going to be important for the stakeholders, for the consumers, for the customers, and for the agency to keep that moving forward.
Yeah. Robert, thank you so much for your thoughtful advice there. Bill, I'm going to move on to you, sir, if I may. I think given time, this might be our last question. But I wanted to talk to you about what I'll call metrics, but really what I'm meaning is what we've talked about is staying true and staying on course and staying the course of your strategy. As Robert just pointed out, it's everybody's job to keep it on strategy. Let's talk about the metrics of success and what happens if it's not measuring up the way you thought, and how you might know that it's time to ditch a strategy and move forward despite your loyalty to it.
Bill, I think that may be a trick question a little bit, because I think, and we've talked about this a little bit, is, in the strategy is dynamic. It's not spend 4 months, set it, in place for a year and then come back to it a year later, right? And very often, it's interesting too, it's like having KPIs that measure the right things is so important. And that's why strategy is important, right? Because sometimes, I don't know about anyone else here, but sometimes I had to scratch my head a few times where KPI boards were built, but they weren't measuring the right objectives, right? Yeah. So, I think the transactional type of measuring tools are there, and they exist, especially in the digital world, right? And there are lifetime value of customer formulas. That you definitely can look at, driving visits to microsites or page views and things like that, right? So I think I'd say structurally we have a lot of tools in the toolbox. I think the job as a strategist is to make sure, hey, let's make sure we're measuring the right things. Yeah. The right way, we have the right weight to them and the right emphasis in the budget spend. And then, then you can feel like everybody can have confidence in that, hey, our plan is solid, like as you mentioned earlier, brilliant strategy, we're measuring it well. And in the world of Agile, test and learn is in every plan now, pretty much, right? So we've been given permission to fail. but that leash is still pretty short.
Yeah. Listen, you framed that so well. We're talking about loyalty and sticking to a strategy. But your point is that a strategy by definition should be a dynamic, living, breathing kind of thing. And you're talking about staying loyal to that. And the measurements should be set up well in advance to understand exactly how that dynamic.
And do we have the infrastructure in place to get the data in real time to enable us to be able to turn and move on a dime, with it as we're going out with new information based on experiential data.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I do thank you for that comment. And I must say, listen, panel, I told you this would move by very quickly. It is 2:00 right now. I thank you, all of you, for this engaging and really brilliant conversation about strategy setting in financial services marketing. Really, each and every one of you really contributed something really extraordinary to this conversation. I thank you. I also wish to thank our sponsors once again, Dynomi, Investing Channel, and Additions Financial for making this all possible. I also want to thank the viewers. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this. We look forward to seeing you at our next one. And I hope everyone enjoys their week, and I hope to see all of you very soon.